Hi, welcome to the quiz. You can answer along on quizalto.com, all for free. The exact URL of this quiz will be in the notes down below. Let's get started. Good luck. What is the purpose of AWS Device Farm's Test Suite Management feature? To automate AWS code commit repository updates. To organize and execute multiple tests together. To schedule AWS Lambda function invocations. To manage AWS RDS database instances. AWS Device Farm's Test Suite Management feature allows developers to organize and execute multiple tests together, streamlining testing workflows and improving test efficiency. How does AWS Device Farm support real device testing for web applications? Through AWS RDS database integration. Through browser testing on real devices. Through AWS Lambda function executions. Through simulated browser environments. AWS Device Farm supports real device testing for web applications through browser testing on real devices, providing accurate results across different browsers and device configurations. What is the role of AWS Device Farm's test case management feature? To optimize AWS Redshift cluster performance. To monitor AWS CloudFormation stack updates. To organize and track test cases. To manage AWS Direct Connect configurations. AWS Device Farm's test case management feature allows developers to organize and track test cases, ensuring comprehensive test coverage and efficient test execution. What is the purpose of AWS Device Farm's built-in performance monitoring feature? To automate AWS CloudFormation deployments. To optimize AWS Lambda function invocations. To manage AWS Redshift cluster performance. To measure app response times and CPU usage. AWS Device Farm's built-in performance monitoring feature measures app response times and CPU usage during test runs, providing developers with insights into application performance and identifying areas for improvement. How does AWS Device Farm manage test data privacy across different projects? By isolating project data. By using AWS Direct Connect for data transfer. By sharing AWS IAM roles across projects. By archiving data in AWS Glacier. AWS Device Farm manages test data privacy across different projects by isolating project data, ensuring that each project's test data is stored securely and accessible only to authorized users. What is the purpose of AWS Device Farm's built-in app monitoring feature? To manage AWS Direct Connect configurations. To track app performance metrics. To optimize AWS Redshift clusters. To automate AWS CloudFormation deployments. AWS Device Farm's built-in app monitoring feature tracks app performance metrics during test runs, providing developers with insights into resource usage and identifying areas for optimization. What is the advantage of using AWS Device Farm's built-in test environment configuration templates? Real-time analytics dashboard. Pre-configured settings for common devices. Integration with AWS CloudFront. Support for automated Docker deployments. AWS Device Farm's built-in test environment configuration templates offer pre-configured settings for common devices, simplifying test setup and ensuring consistency across testing environments. What is the purpose of AWS Device Farm's test run scheduling feature? To manage AWS CloudWatch logs. To optimize AWS AppSync operations. To automate recurring test cycles. To monitor AWS Lambda function invocations. AWS Device Farm's test run scheduling feature automates recurring test cycles, enabling developers to schedule and execute tests at specified intervals, facilitating continuous testing and validation. What is AWS Device Farm primarily used for? Testing mobile apps. Managing EC2 instances. Deploying Lambda functions. Storing data in S3. AWS Device Farm is a service designed specifically for testing mobile applications across real devices, allowing developers to ensure compatibility and functionality. What is the purpose of AWS Device Farm's test environment management feature? To configure device settings for testing. To optimize AWS Elastic Beanstalk deployments. To monitor AWS Lambda function invocations. To manage AWS Direct Connect configurations. AWS Device Farm's test environment management feature allows developers to configure device settings for testing, ensuring that test environments meet specific requirements and conditions. Which AWS service is used to view and analyze test results generated by AWS Device Farm? AWS Lambda. AWS Inspector. AWS X-Ray. AWS Console. Test results generated by AWS Device Farm can be viewed and analyzed using the AWS Console, providing a centralized location for managing testing activities. What is the benefit of using AWS Device Farm's integration with AWS X-Ray for mobile app testing? To optimize AWS Elastic Beanstalk deployments. To trace and analyze app performance issues. To manage AWS IAM roles. To monitor AWS CloudFormation stack updates. AWS Device Farm's integration with AWS X-Ray for mobile app testing enables developers to trace and analyze performance issues, helping diagnose bottlenecks and optimize app performance. How does AWS Device Farm handle network connectivity during test runs? Uses AWS Direct Connect for connectivity. Simulates real-world network conditions. Requires devices to be offline. Provides static IP addresses for devices. AWS Device Farm simulates real-world network conditions during test runs, allowing developers to test mobile applications under various network scenarios. How does AWS Device Farm ensure device availability for testing? By maintaining a large inventory of devices. By using virtual devices for testing. By requiring reservations for devices. By limiting test runs to off-peak hours. AWS Device Farm ensures device availability for testing by maintaining a large inventory of physical devices, allowing developers to access a wide range of devices for testing. What is the purpose of AWS Device Farm's device filtering capability? To encrypt device data. To monitor device battery usage. To schedule recurring test runs. To select specific devices for testing. AWS Device Farm's device filtering capability allows developers to select specific devices for testing based on criteria such as device type, OS version, and screen resolution, ensuring targeted testing across desired configurations. What is the role of AWS Device Farm's network proxy feature during test runs? To automate AWS CloudFormation deployments. To manage AWS IAM role permissions. To simulate different network conditions. To optimize AWS Redshift cluster performance. AWS Device Farm's network proxy feature simulates different network conditions during test runs, allowing developers to test app behavior under various network scenarios and conditions. How does AWS Device Farm manage user permissions for accessing test resources? Through AWS S3 bucket policies. Through AWS RDS database instances. Through AWS IAM roles and policies. Through AWS Lambda function triggers. AWS Device Farm manages user permissions for accessing test resources using AWS IAM roles and policies, ensuring secure and controlled access to testing environments. Which programming languages can be used to write test scripts for AWS Device Farm? Python, Java, Ruby, Swift, Kotlin, Objective-C, PHP, JavaScript, C#, Appium, Espresso, XCTist. AWS Device Farm supports test scripts written in Appium, Espresso, and XCTist, providing flexibility for testing mobile applications developed in different environments. How does AWS Device Farm manage test execution across multiple devices simultaneously? By limiting tests to one device at a time. By parallel execution of tests. By sequential execution of tests. By random selection of devices. AWS Device Farm manages test execution across multiple devices simultaneously through parallel execution of tests, improving efficiency and reducing overall testing time for mobile applications. How does AWS Device Farm handle test data generated during test runs? Shares test data with third-party analytics services. Stores test data securely in Amazon S3. Stores test data on local device storage. Deletes test data after each run. AWS Device Farm securely stores test data generated during test runs in Amazon S3, ensuring data integrity and accessibility for further analysis and reporting. How does AWS Device Farm ensure data privacy during test runs? By restricting access to device logs. By archiving test reports in AWS Glacier. By encrypting test data in transit. By wiping device data after each session. AWS Device Farm ensures data privacy during test runs by wiping device data after each session, preventing unauthorized access and maintaining confidentiality of test data. What is the benefit of using AWS Device Farm's test notification feature? To monitor AWS Lambda function invocations. To optimize AWS Elastic Beanstalk deployments. To receive alerts on test completion and failures. To manage AWS IAM policies. AWS Device Farm's test notification feature sends alerts to developers on test completion and failures, allowing timely action and monitoring of testing activities. How does AWS Device Farm ensure secure access to test reports and artifacts? Through AWS IAM roles and permissions. Through AWS Lambda function invocations. Through AWS S3 bucket ACLs. Through AWS RDS database encryption. AWS Device Farm ensures secure access to test reports and artifacts through AWS IAM roles and permissions, controlling access and maintaining data security throughout the testing lifecycle. What is the purpose of AWS Device Farm's test session scheduling feature? To automate AWS Lambda function deployments. To plan test runs at specific times. To manage AWS Elastic Beanstalk environment variables. To configure AWS CloudWatch alarms. AWS Device Farm's test session scheduling feature allows developers to plan test runs at specific times, enabling efficient resource allocation and scheduling of testing activities. What security feature does AWS Device Farm provide for testing on physical devices? Encrypted device storage. Data isolation between test sessions. Two-factor authentication. Regular security audits. AWS Device Farm provides data isolation between test sessions on physical devices, ensuring that each test session operates in a secure and isolated environment. And that's a wrap. Thanks to everyone who participated. Remember, you can answer along on quizalto.com, where you can keep track of your progress and find much more quizzes. We hope you had a fun and challenging time. Until next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as we upload. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or suggestions, and, if you think this video is worth sharing with someone who could benefit from it, please forward a link to them. See you next time. Thanks for watching.